Assalamu alaikum. This is Huma Islam, your O levels Islamiyat teacher. Today's topic is Treaty of Hudaybiya. Hudaybiya occurred in 6 AH. 6 AH means 6 years after Hijrat. Hijrat means migrating from Mecca to Medina. It is from chapter 3 of your P1. Now, this is just a picture to make my slides look fancy. Okay, background. In 628 CE, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a dream about circulating the Kaaba. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sees a dream in which he is performing Umrah with the companions. He decided to attempt a pilgrimage Umrah to Makkah. He informed his companions and he said that, okay, I've seen this dream that I am circulating the Kaaba. So I believe it's, a sign for me to go to Umrah. So he decided to attempt a pilgrimage Umrah to Makkah. About 1,500 Muslims joined him on this journey. So they all went for this journey and Umrah. Remember, these are the ones that were exiled from their country. So they were all very excited to go back to Makkah and perform Umrah. They entered Ihram at Zul Khalifa. They dressed as pilgrims and brought sacrificial animals with garlands around their necks. Now, remember, they were at war with the Makkans, and all of a sudden they decide that they have to go for Umrah. So they put on their ihrams, and they also, in Arabia, it was a common custom that the sacrificial animals were made to wear necklaces, garlands around their necks, bright garlands. You could also see it in Pakistan nowadays when they bring home goats. They have, necklaces, colorful, bright necklaces around their necks. So they agreed to they went. They didn't even take any weapon with them. They only had a small carving knife in their sheaths in their pockets. Okay, and then this verse is very important. You can use it as a supporting verse for if you get a question on the Treaty of Hudaybiya. Indeed, Allah will fulfill His messenger's vision in all truth. Which vision was this? That he saw in the dream that he's going for Umrah. Allah willing, you will surely enter the sacred mosque in security. Now, Allah is saying that you're going to enter into the sacred mosque, whether it's this time or next time, that is up to Allah. Some with heads shaved and others with hair shortened, without fear. He knew that you did not know. He knew what you did not know. So he first granted you the triumph at hand. Remember, at this time they are stopped from Umrah. They don't go for Umrah this year, but what is concocted? The Treaty of Hudaybiya is established at this time. So Allah is calling the Treaty of Hudaybiya Fathan Qariba. Makkans response. Makkans mistook the approach as an attack. When they heard that the Medina and the Muslims and the Prophet are coming, they thought that okay, they are coming to fight us because like they've just dealt with 3 wars previously. They sent a cavalry of 200 strong men under the command of KBW. You're going to see KBW in many of my slides. It's for Khalid bin Walid to stop the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ avoided conflict and took an alternate route to reach to where he wanted to camp. The Muslims camped at Hudaybiya, 3 miles from Makkah, from Makkah's border. Qaswa stopped at this place and would not move. Remember, it's the same Qaswa who was set free in Medina, and where she sat, that was the place where Masjid al-Nabi was built. And again, now Qaswa, if she stopped and she did not move after that, she would just not move from her spot. She was under divine intervention, basically. So they camped out Hudaybiya. Negotiations take place because the Makkans said that we're not going to allow them coming in. The Prophet ﷺ sent messengers to negotiate. He declared peaceful intentions to Makkan emissaries. Quote, now what did the Makkans say? The Makkans said that even if he has come not wanting to fight, by God, he shall never enter the sanctuary by force against our will. In other words, the Makkans, they were so stubborn, they were determined, even though, you know, each and every person from different places of the world used to come for Hajj and Umrah. They couldn't, legally, they couldn't stop them. But, it was their arrogance and their big headedness in which they said that even if they come here not wanting to fight and just to perform Umrah, we're not letting them in. This shows Makkans' determination to protect their city, or just to protect their ego, I think. Uthman was sent for negotiations. First, three people were sent for negotiations, and they didn't work. Then they sent Usman. Why do you think they sent Usman? Sorry, two negotiations were failures, and then the third person was sent Usman. Why Usman? Because Usman was from the Umayyad, and Sufyan was also Umayyad. He was his cousin, and they thought, okay, if we send Usman, they may listen to Usman because he's their relative. And then I've got in the corner, what does this quote reveal about the Makkans' perspective? The quote, it shows that they were just stubborn. Pledge of Rizwan. Now, Uban bin Said gave Uthman a sanctuary. In other words, Usman bin Said was the one that gave Usman protection. Because remember, once you've exiled from the country, when you go back in, nobody's going to protect you. But Uban bin Said gave Usman sanctuary, gave him a place to stay. He offered Usman to do Umrah, but Hazrat Usman refused. Why did he refuse? Because he said that, okay, I'm not going to perform Umrah unless my Prophet does too. He was kept in Makkah. They wouldn't let him leave. They said, no, 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 stay, stay. So he was kept in Makkah for 3 days. Then 3 days when Usman did not return, a rumor spread out that Usman has been murdered. He has been killed. In other words, Muhammad's ambassador was killed. It meant, and as I've mentioned this so many times before, when an ambassador is sent or a emissary is sent and they are killed or harmed, that's an open invitation for war. Muhammad vowed to avenge him and took a pledge from his followers. This became known as the Pledge of Rizwan. It's mentioned in the Quran. The Prophet said he kept his right hand, and then all of the Muslims put their right hand and pledged that they will avenge the murder of Usman. And then the Prophet placed his left hand on top of all of the rest hands and said, this is Usman's pledge also. It is based on this pledge that the time of the assassination of Usman, after Usman was assassinated during his caliphate, that Aisha, Talha, and Zubair took this stance that at that time we vowed to avenge his murder. We are still sticking strong to that pledge that we took at that time. So they had a valid reason, and so did Hazrat Ali also have a valid reason too. Now, and then there's a verse, you can add this to support your answer. Indeed, Allah was pleased with the believers when they pledged allegiance to you, O Prophet, under the tree. This is Bayt Rizwan that is mentioned in the Quran. This bath was being taken to avenge Usman's murder. He knew what was in their hearts, so he sent down serenity upon them and rewarded them with the victory at hand. The Quraysh heard about the treaty and now pressed harder for negotiations. First, remember, it was the Muslims who were sending negotiators, but the Makkans were stubborn. Now, when the Makkans heard that, okay, they have just vowed to avenge Usman's murder, that is when the Quraysh realized that they've just made a very huge mistake. So now they sent somebody to negotiate because they knew they were gonna fail. So they sent Suhail bin Umru. A peace treaty was decided after negotiations, a 10-year truce between both parties. Which were the both parties? The Makkans, the Qurayshi, the Makkans, the Kuffar. And the second party was the Muslims of Medina. Muslims, and some of the treaty clauses were very difficult for the Muslims. The Muslims had to return to Medina without performing pilgrimage this year. Could you imagine how bad that could have been? Imagine. Oh, this happened this year as well. I usually ask my students that how would a person feel if you've paid for your Hajj and Umrah, you've paid, and as soon as you get there, you're not granted access. How would it feel? This feeling has recently been felt by many Pakistanis in which they had paid for the private Hajj and they were all preparing to go, and just like 10 days before they're supposed to leave for their Hajj, they found out that they are not allowed to go because they were not allotted hotels. Now imagine how that felt for the Muslims at that time, not being allowed to go inside for Umrah, in which they had a very lawful legal right to do Umrah. So the Muslims were hurt. Muslims allowed to perform pilgrimage the following year, and they were only allowed to stay for 3 days. This was a part of the clause that you're going to perform Umrah next year, and you're only going to stay 3 days. And during those 3 days, the Quraysh would vacate Makkah and go and live in the outskirts during this pilgrimage, so that they don't encounter each other. Then no fighting for 10 years means that they're not going to go to war. They're not allowed to go to war. Whoever wishes to join allies with Muslims can do so, and whoever wishes to join allies with Makkans can do so also. So the Banu Bakr joined. There was two. The reason why the Treaty of Hudaibiya finally broke was the allies. They fought with each other. There was a tribe named Banu Bakr. They allied with the Makkans, and the Banu Khuza'a tribe, they allied with the Muslims. Controversial aspects of the treaty. Muslims fleeing to Muhammad would be returned to the Quraysh. Like if a Muslim escapes Makkah and he reaches Muhammad, he will be sent back. And those leaving Muhammad for the Quraysh would not be returned. Now this clause seemed really, really, unjust. So the companions objected to it. They said, no, that's not fair. Muslims running to us and we have to send them back. Whereas if somebody goes from us to there, he's not going to be sent back. Then the Prophet answered that a person who's become Muslim and runs to us, no matter where we send him, he will remain a Muslim, because a Muslim is by heart. The external factors do not affect them. But those leaving Muhammad, those, reverting from Islam, or, being murtad from Islam, and they run to the Quraysh, the Prophet said, one who leaves us, what do we want to do with him? What benefit is he going to be for us if he comes back when he has deserted Islam by his heart? If you see, I've got a point to ponder question. Why might these clauses have been controversial among Muslims? Why were they so, hard to take? Writing of the treaty. This is very important. Hazrat Ali anhu wrote the document. A dispute over the phrase Muhammad Rasulullah arose basically. Suhail bin Umar objected to the Prophet being the Rasul of Allah, because they said we don't accept him as the Rasul of Allah, so remove this. And Ali was ordered by the Prophet ﷺ that, okay, remove Rasulullah. Hazrat Ali refused. Hazrat Ali said, my conscience does not allow me, my taqwa does not allow me to remove your name as Rasulullah. So the Prophet asked Hazrat Ali, okay, show me where it is written and I will remove it. So then Hazrat Ali showed him, and then he removed it himself. Quote, this is what Muhammad, and what was on the treaty, this is what Muhammad, the Apostle of God, has agreed with Suhail bin Amr. And what part was removed? The Apostle of God was removed. Test for the Muslims. Abu Jandal. Now this was an incident occurred during the writing of the treaty. What happened was, the son of Suhail bin Umru, who was he? Suhail bin Umru is the one who came for the negotiations, who was negotiating with the Muslims. Now his son Abu Jandal escaped from Makkah because his father he had become a Muslim, but his father had tied him up in chains. Now he reaches the point of Hudaibiya and he wants to go with the Muslims. He wished to go to Medina but was sent back as treaty had already been signed. Now it was a big testing time for the Muslims at that time. The Muslims said, let him come with us. Look the state that he is in. But because we all know that the Prophet was Sadiq and Ameen, he used to stick to his words, and he has promised that anybody coming to us will be sent back. So Umar bin Abu Jandal was sent back to Makkah. And then after the writing of the Hudaibiya, indeed we have granted you a clear triumph, O Prophet. Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. That we have given you a clear victory. What was the clear victory? Truce. Sometimes victory comes in the form of truce, a peace treaty. Reaction of the companions. Now this is also very important. Usually they were devout and really obedient companions. But here, companions are acting through emotions basically. The Prophet ﷺ ordered the companions to exit their state of ihram. Remember, they entered the state of ihram at Zul Khalifa. They had brought their animals with them. They were ready to perform Umrah. Now they are told to take off, exit their ihram. Some Muslims, like Umar, were unhappy with the treaty. When the Prophet said, okay, exit the ihram, nobody moved. Nobody exited it. They saw it as a compromise with the enemies of Islam because they objected to the treaty that, look, it's so unjust. We have just compromised with the enemies of God. None of the companions got up to exit their ihram. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned this to his wife, Salama. She suggested him to set their example. So what did she say? She said, okay, don't worry. Because he was upset. He goes, this has never happened. It's never happened that I say something and they never agree to it. So she said, okay, don't. They just, at this time, they're very hurt and very emotional. What you should do, just go outside, exit your ihram, clip your hair, cut your hair, and sacrifice the animal, and they'll all follow because they love you so much. So Muhammad set an example by shaving his head and sacrificing animals. Unexpected consequences occurred after the Treaty of Hudaibiya. Some converts escaped to Medina from Mecca and were returned. Like so many Muslims, again, Abu Jandal again escaped, but then again, because of the core clause of the treaty that they had to be sent back, they were sent back. But what happened was they did not go back to Mecca. Abu Basir escaped from Mecca, then Abu Jandal too. They formed a small band raiding Meccans' caravans. What did they do? They said, okay, we're not allowed to stay in Medina. So what did they do? They stayed in the trade route. They camped at a place where they could disturb the Meccan caravans so that, just to put political pressure on them. And what happened was that the Meccans, they came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and requested him to please take these Muslims in. They raid our caravans and they do not let us travel with peace. Because imagine if you can't use the trade route, then naturally how are you economically you're going to grow weaker. So what happened? These people, on request of the Meccans, were asked to be taken into Medina. Significance of the treaty. Usually you're asked about the significance of the treaty in your B-part questions. Now, what was significant is that the negotiations that took place at the time of the treaty, they were taking place on equal grounds. That Quraysh acknowledged Muhammad ﷺ as their equal. Muslims gained access to the Kaaba pilgrimage. The next year they came back and then they could come whenever they want. Islam's appeal increased amongst other tribes. Many tribes entered into alliance with Muslims, the Najd, the Ghatfan tribe, the Thulaba tribe. Remember, they didn't convert, but they were allies. Do you understand? Allies, like we are allies with NATO, we are allies with America. It's not necessary that you belong to the same religion, but you support each other. Muhammad ﷺ could expand influence elsewhere in Arabia. Now, when they know that they were not going to be indulged in war, so now we can spread their religion. The Treaty of Hudaibiya was a turning point in early Islamic history. Why? Because truce occurred, no fight from there, and then when the truce was broken, that was near to the conquest of Mecca then occurred, and then Mecca was overwon. It showcased the power of diplomacy and compromise. The treaty's long-term benefits outweighed the short-term concessions. Now, the treaty's long-term benefits of war for not for 10 years and then are not coming to Umrah that year, but then you're allowed to go anytime after. Those short-term concessions were overruled because of the long-term benefits. Peace allowed, so Dawa could be done freely. Khalid bin Walid, Umar bin al-As, Uthman bin Talha converted to Islam after the Treaty of Hudaybiya. KBW I've got there. Demonstrated Muhammad's diplomatic skills. I mean, the Muslim companions could not understand it, but the Prophet Muhammad could understand that, okay, right now we have to act diplomatically. And then a precedent was set for peaceful conflict resolution in Islam. That you don't have to fight always. You can always agree to a peaceful resolution. Thank you. Composed by Huma Islam.